The courses within this category are taught using Adobe Premiere Pro, which is a paid subscription service. I acknowledge students may not be able to pay for this subscription service, which is why further into this category, you will find a course using a free editing service called Capcut. I recommend all students to learn the entire category regardless of which video editing software you'll be using, simply because of the creative knowledge explored. Remember, the editing software you use is a tool. It does not make your creation, rather your creativity is what matters. Your learning should be structured in this manner. Learn 5 lessons per day by putting those lessons into action. Download content online using some form of online media downloader. Practice and begin creating the free value content for your prospects, which you will use in your outreach. A crucial step in taking action is feedback. After you watch this lesson, you will be rewarded a role which will unlock a new set of channels. Here you will have access to me and my creation team. We aim to give you feedback on all your video creations in less than 24 hours. The CC submissions channel is for all content creation reviews, client work, or creative sessions. The edit roadblocks channel is for technical roadblocks you may face. Your success is pivotal on volume, repetition, and feedback. When using this service, I advise you to upload your creations for feedback through G Drive or streamable.com. Please note, we will not review any creations through your own social media. Remember, practice makes perfect. Get to work. Welcome to the Content Creation Essentials. In this very first lesson, I want us all to get familiar with the editing software that I'll be using to teach you content creation. Now, throughout these modules, I'll be using Adobe CC. This is the industry standard and is what I recommend for all of you to use. However, a lot of the principles I'll be teaching can be applied to multiple editing softwares, such as Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and Capcut. Let's hop over to my screen and let's familiarize ourselves with the user interface. The very first thing I'm going to do is load up Premiere Pro. The first thing you'll be greeted by is a mini learning center. You can go ahead and watch some of these resources. However, I do find that a lot of the Adobe tutorials tend to be quite laborious, so I'm just going to quickly click off that. And this is the main interface. So what we want to do is create a new project, which you can find over here in the left hand corner of the screen. You can also click in the middle where it says create new project. There's some options in the bottom left hand corner if you're working with teams, but we won't explore that yet. And as I previously mentioned, there's also the learning hub for Adobe. But yeah, let's go ahead and create a new project. So I'm just going to click new project on the left hand screen. Now that you're on this interface, the very first thing you want to do is go ahead and name your project. So I'm going to be calling this CC Essentials. On the left hand side, you can see your local files. So if I was to just click download, I've got 2 Andrew Tate files. And if I was to hover over them, I can scrub through and see these files. On the right hand side, you'll also see import settings. You can copy media, new bin, create new sequence. I'm going to just quickly click off new sequence. We'll do that once we're in our user interface of our project. Next to the project name, you'll also have the project location, and you just want to go ahead and choose your location where you plan to save your project. So for me, I'm going to save this in the downloads in a folder I've created specifically for this course, CC Essentials. Hit choose, and there we go. I've got my project name and my project location. What I want to do is show you one method of importing your assets. So if I was to click both of these and hit new bin on the right hand side, and I'll actually name the bin Tate Assets, I can now go over to the bottom right hand corner of the screen and click create new project. So I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this user interface. We will get familiar with this workspace and how you can utilize each individual panel. Now, depending on what version or what editing software you may be using, the interface may be slightly different, and it could also be different at the time of you watching this depending on what updates come out. However, as a general rule of thumb, Adobe Premiere Pro has never really shifted away from this panel structure. So I'm just going to close this learning panel down by hitting the burger bar and hitting close panel. And this will be your core workspace area. Now, as you can see, there's already a file, or the correct terminology for this is a bin. And if I was to double click in that, I've got the 2 videos that I selected at the start when creating this project. Now, you may not necessarily want to do that, because if you've got a project that's full of videos, audios, music, and you import them all under one bin, it may not necessarily be organized organized in the way that you want to edit your project. In the top left-hand corner, we have the import, edit, and export workspaces. However, we don't need to worry about that just yet. Edit will be the main workspace that we will be playing around in. You don't always need to go back into the import screen to bring a file into Premiere Pro. Over in the edit tab, within this bottom left-hand corner, we can see our project. So it says there, Project CC Essentials. If I just click that tab, what I can do is double click in this space, which I'm going to do now. And this will open my Finder or my documents. And then from there, I can go back into downloads and I can choose the 2 files that I want imported in, hit import, and there you have them. Both the files have been imported. So this is generally the way I import files. And then from there within Premiere Pro, I will organize my files how I want them. It's also worth noting you can toggle between a list view at the bottom right hand corner or a icon view depending on your preference. So there you have it, a really quick and easy lesson. I just wanted you to get familiar with the user interface of your editing software. And in the next lesson, we'll start looking at orientation. So welcome to the lesson on orientation, and what I want to do is try and explain some of the panels, some of the workspace that we have within Premiere Pro. The best way for me to do this is to load an existing project, and I think going forward, majority of what we will be doing, I will do in this particular project. So the very first thing is I want to close this project itself, and to do that, I can go into the project panel. I can either click on the burger bar or I can right click and I can hit close project. This will bring us back to a familiar screen which we've seen in the previous lesson, and I can either open project on the left hand side. However, in the home section, I've already opened the project previously, so here I can see my recent projects. I'm just going to go ahead and click on TRW Tate Add. This has now loaded one of my projects. I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to try and just briefly touch on particular areas, and then from there we're going to deep dive into this project, and I will teach you everything you need to know to create a project just as good as this. So before we get started, let's actually watch this video that I created.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value. It's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work on your finance. You make sure you become important. You have to do something so you're not just the average Joe Schmo. You have to do something to become a force to be reckoned with. You're capable of defending yourself and your family and carving out a reality which is worth living in the world today. You grind, you hustle, you build your money-making skills until you're not just getting by with a 9-to-5 boss telling you what to do. You become rich and influential. You become a real player in the game of life. You start this game solo, but you can't win it alone. You need a team, a crew that's got your back, who pushes you to be better. No one in history has ever achieved anything important by themselves. Every fighter had a coach. If you went to the moon, NASA was on the ground. You always had somebody supporting you. You had to be part of a team. As the levels of the video game progress, you need higher attributes. You need better qualities of your character to succeed and pass the levels, and life is absolutely no different. You do not have time to waste. You must increase the capability of your character. You must become a better version of yourself because the game is only going to become harder. That is why you're inside of Hustle's University.
So before we get started, it's worth mentioning that I work on a Mac. Therefore, majority of the shortcuts I may use will be Command plus whatever shortcut. For Windows, it's usually Control. For any shortcuts you might get confused on, please feel free to Google them. However, I'm going to try my best not to use any shortcuts and just dub things down completely. So that's a bit of a disclaimer. Let's discuss workspaces. So if you go over to the top right-hand corner of your project, you can see this button here that says Workspaces. If I click that, I have different workspaces that I can toggle between. So for example, I can go into assembly. You can see the project workspace is the main focus on assembly. You can go into editing, which is more in relation to the source area or the effects control area panel, or you can go into color. You can also go into effects and of course audio. Now, I don't want to confuse you, but within the lessons, we will look at different workspaces and how I utilize them when I'm doubling down on a specific thing within a project. Me personally, the bulk of my content creation, I do in default. So what do I mean by default? Default for me essentially is having all the panels available for me to jump in and out of particular things within my edit. So there's 2 ways of doing this. Again, you can go back up to the right hand corner, click workspaces, and you can go down to all panels, or the other way of doing it, which is what I actually do, is hit window, workspaces, and then at the top here, you can see all panels. I'll just go ahead and click that. And there you go. This is my general workspace, this is how I conduct my edits. In this workspace, there's 5 key panels. The first is the project panel, which is over here on the left-hand side. I went over this briefly in the previous lesson. So at the top, you'll have your project, you have libraries and media browser. We don't necessarily need to go in them because I never actually use them. The only thing you should be concerned with is your project. In this case, TRW Tate Add. You can move this around by dragging the title in the position you want. And within the project box itself, you can double click any area where there's some space. You will have your Finder load up where you can select whatever assets you want and import them. There are particular tools you can use within this project panel that can help you organize your project much better. And this is something I'll be taking you through in the next lesson. So moving on to the next panel, which is the timeline panel. To the left of the timeline panel, you'll have this bar, which basically contains some of the quick tools that we'll be using throughout this module. The timeline itself is separated into 2 sections. So you can see this dividing line here. Above this dividing line is all your video assets, and below this is your sound assets. And again, I'm not going to confuse you by deep diving this. We will get into everything properly. So your timeline is where you build your project. You have a timeline indicator here, which you can scrub through your footage. And if you want to play, you can hit spacebar, which will show you a preview of your current edit, which then leads me nicely onto the program panel. So the program panel here, it will show you what your current timeline looks like, what the edit looks like. And there are a couple of cool features on here, which I'm not going to go into just yet. Then brings me onto the left-hand program panel. You'll see a few options at the top. However, the only ones you really need to concern yourself with at this moment is source and FX control. So source will actually show you your footage from your project panel. So I'm just going to double click on one of the assets I have imported into this project. Now you can see this source file and it will show you the complete footage that you have imported. Next to the source, you'll have effects control. Your effects control relates to the clips you have in your timeline. So for example, if I click this clip here, you have a set of options that have appeared in the effects control. If I click another one, you'll see more options and so on and so forth. This is the area where you will adjust particular effects on your clips. Now, all the way to the right hand side of the user interface, you will see multiple options. I wouldn't necessarily worry about this too much. The only options you tend to use within this space is FX, essential graphics, maybe essential sound, maybe lumetric color. But again, further on into the lessons, I will show you how I navigate this panel. Now, I'm aware that not everybody will stick to the default layout. They may want to move particular panels around. Now, in order to do this, you basically want to hold down on the title of the panel. So let's just take program, and you can move this wherever you would like on your user interface. So you can see the purple highlighting. Let's just say I want to move this next to the project panel, and I pop that in there. There you have it. I have now moved the panel. You also can readjust the size of panels. If you hover between 2 panels, you can click and drag and readjust. However, this is not something I necessarily play around with, just simply because I like to work in default. And you'll find that throughout these lessons, I genuinely always revert to default settings, simply because wherever I may be in the world, wherever I may need to edit, I know I'm familiar with default settings and I can just get straight in without having to go through the whole process of reorientating my project. So there you have it. That's the lesson on orientation. Again, I know it can feel daunting for those who are new to the content creation sphere, but not to worry. As we progress through each lesson, we will get familiar with all that is offered in each workspace. Now, this project can look very daunting, but that is because the project panel area hasn't been organized properly. I wouldn't normally do this. However, the turnaround time on this project was really fast. I was just cutting up and trying to piece things together as quick as possible. This is not something I'd advise for you to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild this project, and I'm going to show you how you should actually organize your files. So the very first thing we're going to do is open a new project. And to do this, I'm just going to go and hit File, New Project. So you should all be familiar with this interface. I'm just going to quickly name the project TRW Tate Add. I'm not going to bring anything into the project, so no need to create a new bin or a new sequence. I've chosen the destination that I'm going to save this project in, which is named TRW Tate Add project file. And down here in the bottom right hand side, I'm going to click create. So as you can see in the project panel, I have both projects open. This timeline or sequence is from the previous project, the original project. and I actually saved the project name as 1. I'm just going to close this sequence down so we start afresh. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. Either you can organize your files within the project panel, which requires you to create new bins. Over in the bottom right hand corner of the project panel, you'll see a folder icon, which is new bin. Click that, and then from there you can rename this to video, and you can just do the same and perhaps create a few files that you know you're going to be using. Then what we can do is double click on the blank area in the project panel and select a few videos that we want to use, import them, highlight them, and then drag them into the bin file. So for these, they'd go under video, and there you have it. You have your videos within that file, and then you'll do the same for sound and overlays. Sequences we will discuss very shortly. That's one method. However, the preferred and better method in my personal opinion is to already have your files organized within your operating system. So what do I mean by this? If I head over to my Finder or my documents, you can see that I've already organized all my assets into folders. So within the video folder, I've got all the videos I need, overlays, something we will discuss shortly, and then audio. I can then highlight these and drag them into my project panel. And there you have it. You already have all the files organized in the bins that you want them. I'll just quickly go ahead and create a bin for sequences. Now within the project panel, you can have different view settings. So down in the bottom right hand corner, we've currently got everything on list view. You can move this to icon view, and you can move this into freeform. I prefer to use icon view. However, freeform can come in handy. So for example, if we was to go into our video bin file, you can see we've got all our videos stacked. And in fact, whilst we're doing this, I'm just going to quickly head over to the workspaces, and I'm going to switch this to assembly. Now I can see things a lot more clearly. If I go back into the video section, I can see all my video assets. I've currently got everything on the freeform view. So let's just say I want to group footage that is just Tate related. I can essentially drag these wherever I want and group them together. Let's just say that's all Tate style footage, and then different footage that is not necessarily related to Tate. So we've got Mike Tyson, the 300 movie. There's a clip here from Creed, which I can put up there. You get the idea, right? It's not necessarily what I do. I prefer to have things in the icon view generally, so I can hover over each video and just scrub through and see what each video looks like. Or it's not uncommon that in my workspaces, if I'm using all panels and the project is starting to get bigger, I will just list all my items. And it's worth noting that once you go into a particular bin, you can go back to viewing all your bins by hitting the return button up here on the left of the project panel. And there we go. We're back into our view of all the bins. It's always good to stay organized because on much larger projects, you will be dealing with multiple files, and sometimes you can get lost in the chaos of your project panel. With that being said, I believe we have some familiarization now with the user interface of our editing software. We understand different panels. We understand how we can change the orientation of things. And we also understand that organization is key when first starting a project. Let's now move over into the more interesting stuff and start creating our first sequence. Let's talk about your project timeline and sequences. So at this moment, we have our organized files in the project panel. Next to the project panel, you'll find the timeline. Now there's multiple ways to create a sequence. Let's start with the most common way by going to File, New, Sequence. Now, when you do this, you're greeted by a new sequence box, which again can be full of information that's quite scary for a beginner. Do not worry if you do not actually know what camera is being used by your client, or perhaps you're unaware of the aspect ratio or the footage FPS, all things we will discuss in a different module. What I recommend strongly here is going with digital SLR and 1080p 30. You could change the name of your sequence here at the bottom. What I tend to commonly do is ignore this entire tab, hit settings, and this is where I'd actually play around with my sequence settings. Again, as I've mentioned previously, I'm more of a default guy. It allows me to be more versatile in different editing situations. So the only thing I'd actually play around with is the frame size. So currently I've got this set at 1920 by 1080, which is a 16:9 aspect ratio. And this is one of the most universal formats being used for YouTube, Rumble, and horizontal videos. Of course, there are other formats you might need to get familiar with. So for example, 1080 by 1080. This is a 1-to-1 ratio commonly used for Instagram squares or on your Instagram feed. And then for example, you can have 1080 by 1920, which is the 9:16 aspect ratio. So I'm just going to quickly click OK here so you have an understanding of what I'm talking about. You can see on the program panel, we now have a vertical video commonly used for TikTok, Instagram Reels. So I'm just going to close that sequence and then delete this from the project panel. And I'm going to show you another way of creating a sequence. In my video bin, I have multiple video files, and let's just say your client has sent you video clips, or you have video clips from different cameras, different settings, different scenes. What I do is find the video clip that is going to be the core narrative of your sequence. And for me, it's actually this one down here, which is TRW Promo 4. And what you basically can do is drag this video clip over to this icon here and let go, and you'll get a new sequence. Now, the settings of this sequence will be the same settings as the video itself. To check this, you can go over to sequence, hit sequence settings. Again, you're greeted by the sequence setting display, and here you can see the frame size 1920 by 1080, 16 by 9, which is cool. So hit OK. So over in the project panel, you can see a sequence has been created just above the video that you selected. So I'm going to drag this sequence up and into my sequence bin, minimize the video bin, open the sequence bin, and I'll just quickly change this to TRW Tate Ad, which is also reflected over here on your timeline. So that's another way to set up your timeline. But for me, it's really simple. I genuinely just hit File, New, Sequence. I have a preset selected, which is usually DSLR 1080p 30. And then in the settings, I will always make sure it's 1920 by 1080 if you're editing long form content. So for the sequence name, I will just put TRW Tate Ad, and then I'll hit OK. And I've got a new sequence with a blank timeline. Now, geez, you may not necessarily be editing horizontal videos. You may be editing square videos, maybe editing vertical videos. Go online and find out what the aspect ratio for those videos are. Let me just quickly come back over to the sequence settings. You need to understand what the pixels are for that aspect ratio, and then just insert them in the frame size. Majority of you will either be working with horizontal videos, which is 1920 by 1080, times it by 2 to get a 4K video, or you might be doing vertical videos, so shorts. You just basically want to switch the numbers around so it's 1080p by 1920 and you're good to go. Okay, geez, let's hop into the next video where we will look at the timeline and start building this ad. Okay, so before we jump into the lesson in regards to the timeline, I just want to give a quick rundown of everything we've gone through and the way that the project is currently set. As you know, we currently have 2 projects open. Over here in the project panel, you can see I've labeled the project that we are working with as CC TRW Tate Ad, and then the original Tate Ad is here and it's labeled TRW Tate Ad. You can also see this reflected into the timeline as I have both of the sequences open. So here in the TRW Tate Ad, as you can see, it's quite messy. So we organize the files, and this is the sequence that I've got in one of the timelines. Similar story for our CC project. Here is the sequence, which is also in our timeline panel. So the timeline panel itself is where we will spend majority of our time. And just to kick things off, I'm going to drag a video onto this CC timeline. So over in the project panel, I'm going to change my view to the icon view, check out some of the videos and see what we can drop into our timeline. I'm going to select this punching bag yacht wide video, and what I'll do is just drag and drop it onto our timeline. Premiere Pro has given me a clip mismatch warning. Basically what this is telling me is the sequence settings that I currently have do not match the video, which is fine. I'm comfortable with the sequence setting that I've got, which is 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to keep existing settings. So as you can see in the program panel, the video clip is smaller. So what I'm going to do just very quickly is click on the clip in the timeline, and then over on the left hand side in the effects control under video there is motion. So I'll just scale this up, and as you can see in the program panel, I'm scaling the video to fit. And not to worry if all that confused you, we will be going into effects controls, motion, opacity and all those type of things later down the line. I just wanted to get the video in a nice position as we talk through the timeline. Now the best way for me to explain this timeline is to go back into our original ad, and I want to focus purely on this timeline itself. The timeline is separated into two areas. You have video at the top, which you can see there is this divider in between. I've mentioned it in one of the previous lessons. And beneath this divider, you have all your audio tracks. So audio 1, audio 2, 3, 4, and so on. And same above the divider, video 1, video 2, 3, and 4. We also have this slide or zoom function, which allows you to get right into the detail of your timeline or zoom out. You also have the same on your right hand side, which you can increase the size of each of the tracks or reduce the size for both audio and video. I'm just going to quickly press shift and minus, which will reduce all the tracks. And I'll just quickly set this up in a way where we can zoom and look at the timeline in much more detail. So you can see I'm dragging this up. So the timeline is taking most of the space within my project. And believe it or not, majority of the times when I'm editing, the program panel where you can see your video or edit is usually very small because majority of the focus is down here within the timeline. So here you can see our timeline. It looks really condensed. This is not the way I would normally edit. And what you can do is change the size of each track. On the left-hand side within each track, you can basically double click. And as you can see, I'm expanding each of the tracks. Me personally, when editing, I want my tracks as expanded as possible so I can see generally what edits and what cuts I am making within the video clips that I've uploaded into the timeline. So in order to expand all of them out, I'm going to press shift and plus and boom. And there you have it. I have every single track expanded, and you can start to notice within the video tracks, I tend to have thumbnails at the start of the video. This just allows me to see the video better. Again, this is all to aid me in seeing the cuts that I'm making within each of the video clips I've added to the timeline. You can change this by using the wrench icon within the timeline display. If you click it, again, you are met with multiple options. Here you can see minimize all tracks, expand all tracks. And if I was to just uncheck show video thumbnails, they've all gone. I wouldn't recommend this. However, you might need to do this if your project is running slow. Running the thumbnails within your editing software can sometimes take up a lot of RAM. So if you've got a solid editing PC or an iMac, I recommend having the video thumbnails on. And of course, I recommend you go through these settings and have a play around and see what works best for you. I'm just going to zoom out and I'm going to quickly arrange some of this. So I've got adjustment layers. We will go into this a bit later on. I don't necessarily need those expanded. For me personally, when I'm editing, it's the video clips themselves that I need expanded, and having the ability to see the video clips is really good. And just before we move on to the audio tracks, it's worth noting that within each video track, there is a set of functions. So if I didn't want to see any of the videos on this particular track, which is video track 2, I can hit the toggle track output on and off. I also have the ability to lock tracks. So if I just zoom in on this particular track here, which is video track 5, and I hit the lock button, you can see you get these etched lines over your video, which essentially means this track is locked. So if I want to try and move this video, I wouldn't be able to. However, on the rest of the tracks, I can easily move the videos. So sometimes that can come in handy, especially when you're dealing with big projects. Being able to lock particular tracks allows you to move certain areas of your project without affecting other areas. Now, down on the audio tracks, it's a very similar story. I tend to like seeing as much of the audio as possible. And as you get better, you'll start to realize when you're editing certain clips, you're actually editing through audio rather than video, because an expanded audio track allows you to see the waveform of the track. Therefore, you can see where there's gaps. So there would have been a gap here. I've made a cut. Perhaps I could have made a cut here. You can see a little blip in the voice. But overall, you'll find as you get better at content creation, most of your post-production is actually done through audio, which is why I'll always say audio is king. Now, within your audio tracks, you also have the ability to mute particular tracks. So if I hit M or mute track here on audio 2, that means everything on this timeline will be muted. And you can do this across different tracks. But a quick tip a lot of people tend to forget is I've seen a lot of editors actually go through the length of muting every single track just to listen to one particular track. So let's just say I only only wanted to hear Andrew Tate's voiceover, the best way to go about doing this is rather than clicking mute on every single track, you can just simply hit solo track, which is the S next to the M. If you click this, then when playing back your edit, you will only be able to hear the solo track that you've clicked. And that's just a little cool tip to keep in mind. You can also add on solo tracks. So let's just say I only wanted to listen to audio track 2 and 3 as well as 1. There you have it. When I play this back, I'll only be able to hear the sound for those 3 particular tracks. So you're probably wondering, what's the need for multiple tracks? Well, if we head back over to our CC sequence here in the top left of the timeline panel, you can see we've got this one clip which consists of 1 video track and 1 audio track. If we wanted to add another video into our timeline, back over in our project panel, let's just say I pull this clip on. You can see I can add this on top of another clip, or I can add it onto the same video track to follow along. But what this allows us to do is layer clips on top of each other. Let me just quickly expand these tracks out. So as you can see, we've got this clip of Andrew Tate punching a heavy bag on the yacht, and because I've layered another clip on top, it automatically changes into that particular clip. With that being said, I actually need to go ahead and readjust this clip. So I'll click it, head back into the left-hand program panel, and in the effects control, just increase the scale once again. Don't be overwhelmed by this function. It's something I will go into in detail later. And one last function I want to show you on the timeline is if you go onto an empty track, right click, you can add a track or you can delete a track. I use these quite commonly. Most people just go ahead and drag clips on and stack the tracks. But I think sometimes it's better just to add the track and then bring the clip over. It allows you a bit more control. That's just more down to preference. But there you have it, the essentials you need to know in regards to the timeline panel. Few tools that you can use to help pick out the exact moment within the clip that you want to use within your project. So you'll hear me refer to, so we've already looked at how you bring clips over to your timeline. I just want to go over a few advanced techniques to help speed up your work. So we've already looked at how you bring clips over to your timeline. I just want to go over a few advanced techniques to help speed up your workflow. And it's worth mentioning, throughout these tutorials, you'll realize there are multiple ways to achieve the same outcome. Majority of the time, it just depends on what you find easier and what allows you to do your project or complete your task quicker. So once again, over in my project panel, I'm just going to double click on video. Let's drag this Dubai clip over, keep existing settings. I'm actually have to reduce the size of this one to get it to fit. Now we have the clip on the timeline. But what you can actually do is over in the project panel, if you was to double click on the video clip itself, it will then open into the source monitor. So if I just expand this monitor so we can see what's happening, here you essentially have the clip and a few tools that you can use to help pick out the exact moment within the clip that you want to use within your project. So you'll hear me refer to 2 terms quite frequently as these lessons progress, and that is in and out. Those are the 2 points you'll use within your source monitor to pick certain areas of your clip that you want to add to your timeline. So let's go ahead and have a look at this. So we've got Tate walking onto the yacht. I believe he turns around and does a quick Aikido move. There we go. I actually like that, right? So I'm going to scroll back, perhaps find a more shorter point that I'm interested in, maybe just before he turns around, which is about there. So I'm going to hit I, which is the keyboard shortcut for in. However, you also have these two buttons here, which is mark in and mark out. I recommend you start getting used to keyboard shortcuts early because it just massively helps your workflow and makes things a lot faster. And as you can see on the timeline, we've got this gray bar which signifies your in point, and the rest of the clip is currently highlighted. So if you carry on scrubbing through, you can play this if you want to. I prefer to scrub, and as the camera comes down and we get the finishing Aikido move, I'm gonna hit O, which is mark out. Now there's also multiple ways to bring this onto your timeline. The most basic way is to click on the source monitor and drag the file down into your timeline, which you can see here. And there you have it. We have just that particular part of the clip into our timeline. Now let's just say you don't necessarily want the audio, or perhaps you want only the audio. There's an option in the source monitor which allows you to drag just the video or just the audio. You can do that through these two buttons here. So if I was to hit this video icon and drag this into my timeline, you can see the only thing that's come across into my timeline is the video. And also you can drag just the audio button, and over in the audio track you can see the only thing that has been carried over is the audio. So another method of bringing the clip into the timeline is using the insert and overwrite. These two shortcut functions are comma and period. And I want to show you something really interesting. Over in the timeline, you can see that we've currently got video track 1 highlighted, and you can move this around to video track 2 and 3, and the same with the audio. So for example, let's just say we've edited a podcast and we now want to add just our B-roll. A great way of doing this is selecting a empty track such as video track 3. You could hit overwrite, which will bring the clip into video track 3. You may also want to ensure that you highlight the right audio track. So if I right click, hit add track, I get audio track 3, and I highlight audio track 3. So currently I've got audio track 3 highlighted and video track 3. If I was to now travel to the start of this, again hit overwrite, and it'll bring in the track and the audio into my timeline. I want you to notice overwrite will bring the clip without cutting the sequence, whereas if you was to hit insert, you get the clip after or within the sequence. What do I mean by within the sequence? So if I just move the playhead into the middle of this sequence, we've still got video track 3 and audio track 3 highlighted, which currently has a clip within it. And I was to hit insert, you can see it's cut the clip straight down the middle and moved the other two clips aside. Let me just quickly get rid of that and show you from two clips perspectives. So the very first thing I'm going to do is select audio track 1 and video track 1. I'll bring this clip into the timeline, and then over in my project panel I'll select another clip. Let's just say we go with this money counter. I've double clicked it, and over here in the source monitor I'm just going to select my in and out points, in there, out there. So I want to reposition my playhead exactly when Andrew Tate finishes his Aikido move. There we go. And what I'll do now is move my track to video 2. There's no option for audio because this is a video only file. Now if I hit insert, it'll cut the clip right down the middle, which is not what I want to do. So Command Z or Control Z on computer to undo. And then if I hit overwrite, it will go on top into the second video track that I selected. And then you will see as soon as Andrew Tate does that, boom, we go into the money counting. And like I said, this is a really cool way for you to just overlay B-roll footage quite fast. There's also another cool technique here to bring clips in that you want. I'm just going to delete these. I got video track 1 highlighted. And over in my project panel, what I'm going to do now is select a few of these clips. So if we go over to this Mongolian army clip, I believe there's a part where Genghis Khan is just walking. So there we go. I'll hit in here and out just before the subtitles come on. I'll do the same over here with the Mike Tyson clip. So there's a part where his coach is teaching him a few sparring techniques. So in there and out. Over here with the Matrix clip, there's a part where it says follow the white rabbit. I'm just going to quickly find that. I'll hit I here and out at the point of rabbit, 0 on the keyboard, and we've already done the money counting clip. Now if I was to select each of these clips, I'll do that by holding down shift and clicking on each one of them and then dragging them over to the timeline. The only parts that will get dragged are the parts that I've selected in the source monitor. So here you go. There's the Mongolian clip, Tyson clip, follow the white rabbit from the Matrix, Andrew Tate's Aikido move, and the money. So that's a really cool way just to bring in the clips that you only are interested in, rather than dragging the entire clips over and then having to cut through each of them and figuring out which part you want. And then the very last thing I want to show you is a quick keyboard shortcut. So if you was to press the arrow up, it will move back through your timeline at each clip. And again, if you press down, it'll move from the start of the clip to the end of that clip and the start of the next clip, down again, down again, down again. So at this point, we're quite familiar with the user interface. We know very briefly how to navigate ourselves within each panel of the user interface. We know how to import a single clip. We know how to import multiple clips. We've got good orientation, which means the following lesson, we will now start getting into actually editing our clips. So going forward, I'll be recording everything using OBS. Previously, I was using QuickTime. Anyone who is familiar with Mac and OBS know that it's a nightmare to set up. I finally got it up and running. Let's hop back into our CCTRW Tate ad. I want to bring your focus to this panel next to the timeline or sequences. In my opinion, these are the main tools you'll be using to chop up your content creation. And at this level of learning, I only want to go over 4 of the tools. The first being the selection tool, which has a keyboard shortcut V. This is your general interface tool, and you'd use this commonly to move your clips back and forth. So let's just go ahead and pick the very first clip that we've used. I'm not going to go into repositioning this clip just yet. That's something we'll talk in a later video. But the selection tool will allow you to move your video from left to right, up and down different tracks. This video itself doesn't have any audio attached to it. But what you'll find is with the selection tool, if you hover at the start of the clip, you'll see your icon change. And what you can do is drag this to make a cut on your actual video. What you can actually see over in the program monitor is where your cut will actually be made. So here we can see at 1 minute 05 approximately. And if I let go, you can see now everything that we've scrubbed through has been deleted. If I go to this clip at the start of the clip, it's exactly where we made the cut. And then I can do the same, but So going forward, I'll be recording everything using OBS. Previously, I was using QuickTime. Anyone who is familiar with Mac and OBS know that it's a nightmare to set up. I finally got it up and running. Let's hop back into our CCTRW Tate ad. I want to bring your focus to this panel next to the timeline or sequences. In my opinion, these are the main tools you'll be using to chop up your content creation. And at this level of learning, I only want to go over 4 of the tools. The first being the selection tool, which has a keyboard shortcut V. This is your general interface tool, and you'd use this commonly to move your clips back and forth. So let's just go ahead and pick the very first clip that we've used. I'm not going to go into repositioning this clip just yet. That's something we'll talk in a later video. But the selection tool will allow you to move your video from left to right, up and down different tracks. This video itself doesn't have any audio attached to it. But what you'll find is with the selection tool, if you hover at the start of the clip, you'll see your icon change. And what you can do is drag this to make a cut on your actual video. What you can actually see over in the program monitor is where your cut will actually be made. So here we can see at 1 minute 05 approximately. And if I let go, you can see now everything that we've scrubbed through has been deleted. If I go to this clip at the start of the clip, it's exactly where we made the cut. And then I can do the same back, right, to add the clip in. Same on the opposite side. So at the end of the video, we can drag it back. And now you can see on the program monitor on the left hand side, it's showing where the clip will end. If I just scrub to the end of the clip, there you go. That's where we had it. And that generally is all you need to know for the selection tool. And the next tool that we'll be looking at is the razor tool. So I'll catch you in the next video. Before we get started, it's worth noting that when creating this ad, I was only sent 1 file, and that 1 file was an audio note from Andrew Tate. Over in my project panel under audio, I've got the original audio file. The razor tool, which I believe is the most important tool in your arsenal, can be accessed by either pressing C or clicking the razor tool icon here. And when you move your cursor back over to the timeline, you can see that either your video clip or your audio clip has a line where you can create a cut. If you remember previously, I mentioned that when chopping up a video, you'll actually find that you'll be doing this through your audio, because your audio allows you to identify areas that don't have any words or seem like they're mistakes. So if I was to just zoom out on this timeline, and let's for a second pretend that this audio came with a video or a talking head of Andrew Tate, I can straight away identify that somewhere around here, there seems to be a cutoff. So that's most likely a mistake. And at the beginning of the audio and in certain areas of the audio, there seems to be a drop off of the voice. So that's most likely where I'm going to do my cuts. Let's just go ahead and do our very first cut, and I'm going to be using the audio to do this. This initial part of the audio, I'm just going to put a cut right at the start of when the voice talks. Notice how I've not even played the audio yet. I already know that there's going to be nothing there. And what I can then do is basically click my selection tool or press V on the keyboard, click the part of the video where I've made a cut, and I can hit delete. And there you go. I've removed some of the audio and now have this space where the audio once was. What you can actually do is click in the space and hit delete, and it will move the audio down the timeline. So let's have a quick here of the very first words that are said within this audio.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game.
So straight away, there's a gap in between here. And one of the key things about editing a video ad in this case, or majority of the talking head videos that you'll be editing, is you don't want too many gaps between the voice. So I'm just going to scrub my playhead back and press C, create a cut there at the start of where I want the cut, and then create another cut here at the end of where I want the cut. Hit V to go back into the selection tool, select the area, press delete, and I've got this gap. Now, what you can do is drag this back and fill the space that you've just cut out. There's a key thing worth mentioning here. Over in the timeline, you can see this magnet button, which is snap in timeline. You want to ensure that you have that on. What that basically allows you to do is create this magnet type of pull between clips. So when I'm dragging this clip, I can just feel it snap straight into place, and I can let go, and I know that's fitting flush on the audio. So let's just quickly listen to that now.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game.
Perfect. And again, I can start to see these gaps. So I'm just going to quickly start creating cuts. See how I've just quickly moved straight down the timeline? I already know that there's gaps there that I won't want. So what you can do is zoom in even further just to make sure you really identify the gaps that you don't want, and you can make more precision cuts. And I generally find that I'm much more of a precision style of editor. I really like to get down into the detail and make sure that the cuts are solid. So we've come to this area where there seems to be a drop off on the audio. Now, I believe in this one take, there's probably one or two parts within this audio note that need to be removed completely. Let's have a listen at this part of the audio.
You have to do something to become a force to be well reckoned with. Fucked up. You work on your fitness.
So clearly he's fucked up there. I'm just literally going to drag this to the point where he restarts and we're good.
You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work on...
So there's a gap there again. I'm just going to C to change my cursor into the razor tool, pop 2 cuts, V to change back to the selection tool, click it, hit delete. Job done. Now, you might say that why have I not taken the time to snap each of these as I'm cutting? Well, there's a really cool tool in Adobe, and what you can basically do is go over to sequence at the top, and you can scroll down and hit close gap. When I hit this, I want you to pay attention to the gaps on the timeline. There you go. It's closed most of the gaps. It probably could have done a better job, but that's fine. I'll just quickly close them by hitting the space and clicking delete. Let's look back from the start.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You make sure that you make money. You become important.
I'm happy with that. What I might do is bring in the next clip. So back into my project panel, I'm going to go up and into the videos. I'm actually looking for the 300 clip where the young lad is walking in the snow, and I believe I found it here. Let me just double click. And to do this, I'm going to scrub through the timeline in the source and find the particular clip I'm looking for, which I believe starts around here. So I to pick the in point, and O to pick the out point. I'll drag that onto the timeline. So you can see I've still got the snap function, right? And what I want to do is avoid putting the audio on top of the current audio I've got. So I'm just going to put it there and let go. Boom. So it's created another track for me automatically. Let me just double click that. I'll keep the core audio, which is Andrew Tate talking, on the very first audio track, and I'll move this audio further up on the second track, perhaps move this down, and let's see where we can fit it, right?
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no
So listen to this, right? The audio itself from the 300 clip has its own audio.
Constantly tested, tossed into the wild, left to pit his wits and will against nature's fury.
Okay, so on that basis, I'm going to have to get rid of the audio. And to do that, I'm going to right click on the clip, hit unlink. Now, when I hit unlink, this allows me to decouple the video from the audio, hit unlink, and I'm going to click the audio and click off it. So now I've just got the clip that I want. I've popped it in. I've showed you lot how to make cuts. I just want to go over it again really quickly. You might be wondering why you can see this human anatomy video on top of the 300 video, which is beneath. This is to do with overlays, and I'll explain this to you in a later video, but for now, just bear with me. So I like this opening. I like where he's walking, taking a few cautious steps, and I think just before then, I'm going to cut it. So again, I'll hit C on my keyboard, make the cut, and I'll carry on scrubbing to a point where I think I don't need the clip. Most likely where he's sitting in the cave and he does this face turn, right? I like that. So I'll make another cut there, hit the clip in the middle, hit delete, and bring it back to the previous clip and let it snap. That is the razor tool. And as I said before, from my perspective, this is one of the main tools. A lot of people will say it's a legacy tool, but you'll realize as we progress through the CC Essential modules, I'm more of a legacy creator. So I was actually around when a lot of the ripple tools and the slip tools that are now currently available weren't available when I began my journey in content creation. The next tool I want to look at is the Ripple Edit tool. This can be found through the keyboard shortcut B, and it is also the third icon down on your editing toolbar. Let's quickly listen to the intro audio given by Andrew Tate.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills.
So when listening to that, I actually thought in my head, it's extremely representative of the movie 300. And there's an intro scene in the movie which shows the difficulty of the Spartan children and how they become truly independent and great warriors. So I downloaded the 300 clip from YouTube, and I want to try and find a particular scene which is very representative of what Andrew Tate is talking about in his intro about life as a man is very difficult and you have to go through certain loopholes, certain difficulties to become great. Now, with that being said, I'm going to quickly press B on my keyboard to bring up the Ripple Edit tool. And I want to start by showing you why I wouldn't necessarily use this tool when building out my project. It's actually a tool I might use once I've got majority of my project within the timeline. If I was to try and ripple delete this particular scene with the cut up audio that I've got, by hovering my cursor towards the start of the video and dragging, I'm unable to drag. That's because I can only use this tool with just a single video and audio track that's linked together. I'm just going to zoom out and I want to show you how this tool works. So if I just quickly scrub through the timeline, there's a particular scene within the movie that I like, which is this walking in the snow, and then it's this fierce competition of trying to survive on your own, and there's this wolf that is posing a threat. So I like that scene. A quick way to cut the clip to that scene is using the Ripple Delete tool. Go to the very start of the video. You can see the icon has changed. I will drag, and once again in the program panel, you can see as I'm dragging on the right hand side, I'm able to scrub through the footage and see where I want to stop. I'm going to keep pulling the clip to the scene that I want the clip to start at, which is around about here where Leonidas is walking in the snow. So if I let go, you can see straight away that the gap that would normally be left from a razor tool is eliminated and the clip moves straight to the start of the playhead. So if I was to just play the clip from here, there we go. We've managed to erase all the beginning of the footage and it has started here. Now with the Ripple Edit tool, I'm unable to make individual cuts. So I think I'm happy with the 1 or 2 footsteps in the snow. I would still have to switch to my razor tool, press C on the keyboard, make a cut. Then from there, I can press B to go back into my Ripple Edit tool and start dragging from where the cut has been made and follow the exact same process until I get to a part that I'm happy with, which I think is around about here where Leonidas turns his head to look over at the wolf. And if you look at the timeline, you can see the playhead line sits at where I initially made the cut. You can see the area that I've dragged past using the ripple edit tool. And if I let go of the clip, what will happen is this clip will remove the area that I've dragged past and snap to where I initially made my cut. There you go. So I actually think I've missed the scene I was looking for. So I'm going to just quickly press Command Z and I'll start the process again. Press B. I'm going to drag it across to the point where the video zooms in on him sitting in the cave area. There we go. So let's just quickly scrub and make sure that's correct. Yeah, so I think I'm happy with that. And I probably will place another cut just before the camera switches to the wolf. So if I zoom in, hit C, pop my cut in, and I'm going to switch to my ripple delete again, press B, drag it over, and I'm going to get to the point where the wolf's eyes come into play, which is about there. And there we have it. I've managed to cut this into 3 different scenes, and I've not had to go through the process of deleting the gaps in between. Now, as mentioned in the previous video, I'm a legacy editor. I don't necessarily use this tool. I don't think it's as great as people make it out to be, but again, it's down to your preference. It's always good to know the set of tools you have in your toolkit. I'm literally going to quickly piece this intro section together, and from there I can show you where I actually do use the tool. Okay, so what I've done is I've cut the stock footage of this human anatomy. I've coupled it with the scene from 300 that I'm happy with, and then I've gone back into the anatomy footage that I also think is relevant, and I tend to select these clips dependent on what is being said in the audio. So let's just have a quick watch.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work.
Okay, so I'm happy with that, and I'm happy with the way that the project is going. There are some things I need to bring in, such as the music, effect, video styling. All these things we'll go through in the following lessons. I just want to finish this by showing you where I would actually use the ripple edit tool. Let's ignore the video clips for a second, because the very first thing that I've actually composed is the audio, and I'll zoom in. There's a gap that's not really required. I'm just going to hit B and bring up my ripple edit tool. Hover between the cut till the arrow is facing left, because that is the area I want to remove. Again, you can see the area that I'm trying to remove, and ensuring that the ripple delete just brings the audio in front and snaps it to where I'm deleting this blank space. So I'll let go. And there you go, the audio's joined. That is a very similar explanation as I've done before, but where I feel this tool comes in handy is when you have an effect that you've applied. In this case, it's constant power, and I won't go into explaining this just yet. Rather than going down the length of deleting the effect, pulling that back, deleting the gap, and bringing the audios back together, you can simply press B. You don't have to remove the effect. Follow the same procedure, let go, and the effect is still on the audio while simultaneously closing the gap between the audio. That is where I would most likely use this tool. Other than that, I usually don't use this tool. However, the next tool that we will go into, I do use quite often, which is the track selection tool. The last tool I want to discuss is the track selection tool. The keyboard shortcut for this tool is A, and it is the second icon down on the editing toolbar. Now, for me to show you what this actually can do, I'm just going to quickly hop back into the completed ad. And to do this, I'll just switch sequences on my timeline. I'm going to press A on my keyboard, and straight away you can notice the cursor has changed into 2 arrows pointing from, indicating a movement from left to right. The very first thing I want everyone to understand is wherever you position your cursor, you'll be able to move the entire project. So let's just say I want to move my entire project from this particular point. If I was to click and drag, you can see I've moved the entire project. However, what you will notice is if there are chunks of footage or audio that do not have a cut from the position you've moved from, they will also move as well. So I'm just going to hit Command Z. And what I also want to show you, if I hold down Shift, you've noticed that the cursor has turned into 1 arrow. What this allows you to do is move individual track footage across your timeline. So boom. There you go. And I'll do that again here on the very first video track that I've got. I've got my selection tool on by pressing A. I'll hold down Shift, and then from this point, I can move this particular video. Keep in mind, you want to let go of Shift when you start to drag and move the videos across. So there you go. Now you might be thinking, when will I actually need to use that? Commonly, what you'll tend to find is as you're assembling a video together, you might stumble across a different piece of footage. You might stumble across a different piece of audio that you think could fit perfectly somewhere. So you'd need to separate your project out from left to right and then insert it in. This is a really quick and easy way to do that rather than dragging and moving the entire project file individually. It's also worth noting you can do this in the opposite direction as well. So if I click A to bring my track selection tool back up, and I'm going to just quickly move this particular video clip, which is the outro, just so I can show you. I'm going to zoom in, and let's just say I want to close this gap. I can hit Shift, which brings up the single track selection, and hit A, and you notice that the arrow has now moved to indicate from right to left. So I can now let go of everything on the keyboard, and then from there I can go back into this particular clip and drag it back into position. So really quick lesson on track selection tool. For me personally, the main tools I'll use is the selection tool, the track selection tool, and the razor tool. However, as I always say, the more tools you have in your arsenal, the better you are at creating content. Since the only thing I was sent to create this ad was the audio, it's probably worth me showing you a quick audio trick. But to do that, I need to open a talking head video. So let's just quickly run through the basics again, just so you can see how quick it is to open a new project. So I'm going to hit File, New Project, and I'm going to name this project Talking Head. From there, I'll choose the location I want to save the project. I've got a project folder here called Professor Arnold. I'm going to double click and I'm going to choose this as the location of my project. Hit create. Now over in the project panel, you can see I've got the Talking Head project. I've got the CC TRW Tate ad and then the original TRW Tate ad. Under the Talking Head project, I'm going to double click in the blank space. Within the Professor Arnold folder, I have an audio and a video clip. So I'll import both of them. Back over to File, New Sequence. Again, I'll just quickly name this Talking Head. I've got my settings as digital SLR 1080p 30. I'll just quickly move over to settings. You can see the frame size is 1920 by 1080. I'm happy with that. I'll hit OK. And there we have our new sequence. I'm going to expand the timeline by pressing Shift and plus. I'm just going to zoom in on the timeline, and over in my project panel, I'll drag the video in and I'll also drag the audio. Now from the waveforms, you can actually see that the audio which is recorded into the mic is not synced with the audio that's been recorded from the video. So let's play it and you can hear what it sounds like.
Quick reminder, this helmet is actually quite heavy.
So a really simple way to link the audio is to select both the video and the audio. You can do this by holding down Shift and selecting, or you can just highlight the two of them and let go. Right click, and in this menu you can see synchronize. I'm going to click synchronize and I'm just going to check the circle audio and hit OK. And there you have it. Adobe has automatically synced both the audio and the video together. Now whilst this is a small video, when you've got a big project that you might be handling for a client, it can come in really handy syncing both the video and the audio together. Sometimes it's always worth just checking so I can zoom in onto the timeline and even listen to the playback.
Quick reminder, this helmet is actually quite heavy.
If for whatever reason you feel like it's slightly off, you could press forward or back on your arrows keys. So as you can tell, back, forward, forward, and it will ensure that the video only moves down one frame.
Quick reminder, this helmet is actually quite heavy.
Now, once you've got both the video and the audio aligned, you may want to keep the original audio. However, you might not want to mute the entire track. So the best way to resolve this is to highlight just the audio. You can do this by selecting the Option key on Mac, hitting the audio, right clicking and unchecking enable. You'll see that the color of the audio has now darkened, which basically means this audio will no longer play or be taken into account of your video edit.
So what I want you to do is to be in tip-top shape, do your push-ups, do your training, train every day.
If, however, you know that the audio from the mic is pretty good, you can just go ahead and drag this up over the video audio and let go. It'll automatically replace it. And then what you'll tend to find is you may have to do double cuts. So a cut on the video and then a cut on the audio. To avoid doing this, you basically want to link both the video and the audio together. There's multiple ways to do this. You can shift on the keyboard, highlight both the audio and the video. Now, if I was to move the video, you can see the audio will move with it and it will stay in sync. If I wanted to cut, press C. I'll cut directly through the video and the audio. Press B to ripple, delete, drag to the point that I know Arnold starts speaking again, let go, and I have both the clip and the audio.
Train every day, otherwise you won't be able to wear it
in sync, and I've cut out spaces.
Can't go on a crusade, like you'll get your head bashed, and it's not good. So
here you can effectively see how I'm combining the different editing tools along with the audio synchronization to allow me to speed my workflow up quite effectively for this talking head. And what we'll do going forward is I might jump in and out of the talking head video, out of the Tate ad video, just so you can understand different techniques that I use to compile my content creation. Let's hop straight back into the CCTRW Tate ad, and what I actually want to go through is adding or overlaying B-roll footage. Now, technically, A-roll footage is your main footage. Commonly, let's hop straight back into the CCTRW Tate ad, and what I actually want to go through is adding or overlaying B-roll footage. Now, technically, A-roll footage is your main footage. Commonly, you're talking head footage, and because as a creative team, we are much further ahead. We don't necessarily need the ad, so when I'm working with a client sometimes, let's hop straight back into the CCTRW Tate ad, and what I actually Let's hop straight back into the CCTRW Tate ad, and what I actually want to go through is adding or overlaying B-roll footage. Now, technically, A-roll footage is your main footage. Commonly, you're talking head footage, and because as a creative team, we are much further ahead. We don't necessarily need the ad, so when I'm working with a client sometimes and we might be piecing together a video ad, I already have heaps of footage, a whole library of the client, in this particular case, Tate. Therefore, I only need the audio, so we can basically say the audio here is the A-roll footage. What I'm gonna start doing is piecing the B-roll footage on top of the video. Let's hop straight back into the CCTRW Tate ad, and what I actually want to go through is adding or overlaying B-roll footage. Now, technically, A-roll footage is your main footage. Commonly, you're talking head footage, and because as a creative team, we are much further ahead. We don't necessarily need the ad, so when I'm working with a client sometimes and we might be piecing together a video ad, I already have heaps of footage, a whole library of the client, in this particular case, Tate. Therefore, I only need the audio, so we can basically say the audio here is the A-roll footage. What I'm gonna start doing is piecing the B-roll footage on top of the video. So geez, you can see here that I've actually downloaded a clip from Rumble, which is Tate crashes McLaren, and it's out in the Dubai Autodrome. There was genuinely quite a few beautiful clips of the Bugatti, so I would take the time and scrub through all 22 minutes of the video to pick out perhaps maybe 1 or 2 clips. I've already inserted 2 clips here, and now I'm just looking for another cool clip of the Bugatti. So let's just have a quick look at the B-roll I'm adding.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work on your finance. You make sure you become important. You have to do something so you're not just the average Joe Smo.
Okay, so for me, it's a lot easier because I'm re-engineering what I've already created over here in the TRW ad. But what you'll realize, ignore all the sound design at the bottom. The B-roll itself is something I've pieced, not necessarily from start to finish, but I've constantly listened to the audio and thought of particular things that struck my mind that relate to the audio. So for example, if I go down here, there's a part where Andrew Tate is talking about NASA.
Coach, if you went to the moon, NASA was on the ground. You always had somebody supporting you. You had to be part of a team.
So logic states, in my mind, a great way of projecting this out to the audience or making them feel the words that have been said is to find some type of clip, some type of footage that relates to a spaceship launching, right? A rocket launching into the sky. And funnily enough, one of my family members was actually watching a video called Ad Astra with Brad Pitt in. I remember walking past the room and seeing it on the screen. And I actually took a couple of steps back and asked them, what movie is that? And from there, I was able to go into YouTube and find this exact clip. Let me just bring the full clip in the project. So to do that on this timeline I already have, I'm going to right click and just click reveal in project. And there it is. It's showing me on my project panel. Double click that. So here's the full clip. And I believe the video is basically Brad Pitt flying out to the moon. I could have gone with this here if I wanted to. In fact, on this one, let's use this clip. So I'm just going to zoom in, find the part where I can see the rocket or space shuttle, whatever you want to call it, in. There we go. That's the out point there. Let me just drag this onto the timeline section where Andrew Tate talks about NASA. If you went to the moon.
If you went to the moon, NASA was on the ground. You always had somebody supporting you. You had to be part of a team.
Yeah, see, that also works.
If you went to the moon, NASA was on the ground. You always had somebody supporting you. You had to be part of a team.
And another thing worth noting, whilst adding my B-roll footage, I'm not actually pulling any of the sound itself. Although when I double back and looked at the punching bag yacht video,
you work on your fitness, your fighting skills.
You can hear the sound effects of the punching, but I believe in my original TRW Tate ad, if I was to just quickly zoom in on this section, I manually put in the punch sounds. So you can see them there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I timed them with the actual punches. I've selected the solo track just so you can hear those particular sound effects that I popped in. Obviously, doubling back and listening to the original audio, I could probably use that. I don't necessarily like the turbulence in the background. You can hear some of the wind. Obviously, the mic's not necessarily picking up the sound of the punch bag the way I would like. I don't know. Generally, what you tend to find is I load in most of my B-roll without the sound unless I'm pretty confident that that is the sound that I'm going to use. For example, the 300 footage, there is a narration in the back of the actual footage. Therefore, I will remove it. And perhaps I may find some sound relating to a winter feeling, a snowy feeling, a wolf growling, and then I'll include that. But what we're starting to do is tiptoe in sound design. I don't necessarily want to go down that just yet. This video, I just wanted you lot to understand that I'm piecing the video together based on the narrative that I can hear. And sometimes this genuinely does rely on your creativity. Yes, you may have assets from your client, may have footage from your client, but sometimes you do need to reach out, get hold of stock footage, get hold of YouTube footage, get hold of a video, a movie you might have watched that relates to it, just to bring those emotions into your project. We've already slightly touched on video properties, but in this lesson, I want to make sure that we understand how we can use video properties from a very basic level. So as you can see on my timeline, I've started to build out the video sequence. Again, as I've mentioned previously, this is a lot simpler for me because I'm re-engineering a video I've already created. For you, you'd have to draw inspiration, creativity, and make sure that you listen to the narrative that you're playing with. So how do we access the video properties of a clip that we've got in our timeline? So let's watch this through and see some of the clips that we've got on our timeline.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work on your finance. You make sure you become important. You have to do something so you're not just the average Joe Smo. You have to do something to become a force to be reckoned with, capable of defending yourself and your family and carving out a reality which is worth living in the world today. You grind, you hustle, you build your money-making skills until you're not just getting by with a 9-to-5 boss telling you what to do. You become rich and influential. You become a real player in the game of life. You start this game solo, but you can't win it alone. You need a team, a crew that's got your back, who pushes you to be better. No one in history has ever achieved anything important by themselves. Every fighter had a coach. If you went to the moon, NASA was on the ground. You always had somebody supporting you. You had to be part of a team.
So straight away, there's a few clips within this timeline that need adjusting. For example, this particular clip, you can see it's a smaller frame than our actual video. So to readjust the video properties, you will click on the clip in the timeline, and then over in the effects control panel, or next to where your source is, you can see it says here effects control. If you click this, you'll be greeted by a set of video properties. Here's where you can play around with the properties of the clip. So for example, I want to increase the size of this clip. I can do this by manually entering the numbers just by clicking on the scale number, or I can hold it down and drag it. And as you can see over in the program monitor panel, I am scaling in on the clip and we can make it fit there. Also in the motion section of video properties, the position button, the very first few digits you've got, in this case 960, if I was to hold down and push to the right, it will move the clip to the right. To the left, it'll move the clip to the left. This is the x-axis movement, or the 540 numbers next to it. If I was to move this, I can move it down by dragging to the right. I can move it up by dragging to the left. This is your y-axis. And then further down on this position track, you can see there's a reset parameter which will put it back into position. So as you can see, I've now readjusted this clip.
You work on your fitness, your fighting skills. You work on your
I believe there's another clip which I've dragged in that's actually zoomed in quite a bit already, which means that the clip that I've dragged in is bigger than the frame size that I'm using. So again, to readjust this, click on the clip in the timeline, go over to your effects control, and the scale, I'll position the scale out until it fits, which is about half of its original scale, so 50. There's also another way you can go about doing this. So if I hit Command Z and put the clip back to its original oversized frame, you can actually double click on the program monitor, and then from there you can drag the clip around and move it into the position you want. You also can see there is a adjustable box to allow you to scale out, scale in, and this is just entirely on your preference, what you tend to find easier to do. Me personally, I always just play around with the numbers in the effects control panel. So there's a clip here where I believe it looks too wide, but it still fits, and it's the clip of Martin Luther King. Here you can see. And what you can do is uncheck uniform scale in scale, and what this basically allows you to do is you can play around with the scale height and width. So in this case, I'm just going to push the scale width out to a position where I think it looks good, which is around about 370. And then from there, what I can basically do is keep repositioning the height and the width until I fill this out, which is a lot better than the original clip, which seemed to be stretched too wide. So that's a little neat feature that you might want to take into consideration. but it's very unlikely that you'll be adjusting the height and width with different parameters. Then you've also got rotation. So down here, you can see I can rotate the clip in whatever position I want. Anchor point and anti-flicker filter. We won't cover that just yet. We'll be talking about this in future lessons. You also have the opacity. So if I just click on this clip here, let me readjust so it fills the entire frame. But opacity literally will change the opacity of your video. It looks like it's making it darker there, but that's because it's on a black background. So on my original TRW ad, I actually had some of this overlaying on the punching bag scene of Tate. So if I just drag this clip over and move my playhead, you can see that it's actually covering the entire screen. And what I can do is on my video properties for the human anatomy, zoom in and reposition so it fills the actual screen. But what opacity allows you to do is basically see the clip underneath. So this is at 75%, as you can see. However, there are more intuitive ways of doing this blend between two clips. As you can see here, it says blend mode. You also have time remapping, which is again something I'll go into further. These are more advanced techniques, you could say, which I will be looking at and walking you through the process of using them in future lessons. So there you have it, video properties. At this point, it's probably worth me mentioning three types of cuts, which are the straight cut, J cut, and L cut. A lot of people get confused with this because they believe that the cut is related to the video, whereas the cut itself is actually related to the audio. Now, what I've done is basically found this piece of audio from the 300 Leonidas clip. So let's just have a quick listen to it. Airy type of background sound with the wolf growling. If this was a straight cut, there'd be no audio bleed across anything. And what do I mean by this? I mean that the clip itself would just have the audio whilst that clip is playing. Here, have a look.
It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level.
That is categorized as a straight cut. A J cut, on the other hand, has audio bleeding from the following clip in the previous clip. What do I mean by this? So let's just say this was one clip and this was the audio relating to that clip. I would basically bleed this audio back into the previous clip. Let's have a listen. That can be categorized as a J cut. The reason why it's called a J cut is because you can see these three clips and the audio together create a J prior to the 300 Leonidas clip coming into play. That's a J cut. Then you can have an L cut, which essentially means that the audio bleeds onto the next clip after the 300 Leonidas in this case. So if I just drag the audio back over on the other side and we can have a listen again. So this is called an L cut because the clips and the audio create a L shape, which is behind the following clip, in this case, the human anatomy. I quite like the L cut in this particular scene. I think it does a great job of conceptualizing the whole narrative of being on your own and becoming strong. And it brings the whole wolf element into the human anatomy after. Let's listen to this audio SFX that I've added in an L cut style.
Life as a man is not a walk in the park. It's like a video game. You start from absolute nothing. You start from zero. You have no intrinsic value, and it's up to you to level up your skills. You work on your fitness.
I'm happy with that. So, just to summarize, you have straight cuts, J cuts, and L cuts. Straight cuts are where the clip and the audio stay within their cut. You have a J cut where the audio bleeds prior to a previous clip, and you have an L cut where the audio bleeds onto the next clip. I wouldn't necessarily worry about this too much, but I thought it's worth mentioning these three types of cuts just in case you do come across these common names that are used throughout the content creation industry. I want to move on to teaching you how to create motion within your video clips and specifically zoom in, zoom out effects and talk about keyframing. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand what those means in depth. So we have our CCTRW Tate ad on screen. As you can see, I've assembled all the video clips in the order that I like. And what I want to do is focus particularly on the punching bag yacht clip. A very simple clip. It's Andrew Tate punching the heavy bag. Now, I've already taught you how to reposition your clip. So for example, you'd click on the clip and then over in the effects control panel on the left hand side, you can reposition and you can scale in and out. What I want to do is show you a zoom in and zoom out effect. So to do that, let's hop over to our original TRW Tate ad. So if I find the same clip, I'm just going to scrub through very lightly so you can see what's happening. There's actually a zoom in and zoom out effect with a level of motion blur applied to it. I want to create some type of zoom in, zoom out, or you could call it a shake effect, but I use a zoom in, zoom out. So I'm going to just quickly keyframe to the point where Andrew's about to kick the bag or does kick the bag, right? And now over here in the motion section, next to scale and position, you can see these little toggle animations, or you could call them stopwatches. They are what we call in the video editing world keyframes. So if I was to click both of them, you'll notice on this timeline within the effects panel, there's two diamonds that have appeared against the playhead. If I was to move 3 frames down, 1, 2, 3, I then can change the position. In this case, I'm going to zoom in and then I can go 1, 2, 3 again, and I can zoom back out, and I can go 1, 2, 3 again and zoom back in, 1, 2, 3 again, and then perhaps zoom back out. What you'll find is when I play that clip, there'll be a zoom in, zoom out effect. Did you see that? Let me play it again. So what keyframes allows us to do is add motion into our videos. As you can see, the video is moving in and out and you get this really cool effect. And I genuinely use this on any type of scene or footage that I have that needs some type of impact in the video. Believe it or not, that's a very basic level of teaching you a zoom in, zoom out effect within a clip. There are other techniques that allow you to create some type of motion blur on top, which is what I've used in the original ad. So if I just go over to the TRW Tate ad, and over here, if I quickly scrub through, you can see the motion blur, but that's something we'll talk about in a little while. For now, you understand that using keyframes, we can zoom in and zoom out. Now you can use this throughout your clip. What I'm actually going to do is copy over the same keyframe. So here, Andrew Tate throws a jab. And what I'll do is when he throws that jab over in the effects control panel, I'm literally going to highlight all the keyframes, Command C or copy, click on the top of the playhead where I've got it currently to ensure that I don't move the video or the clip, and press Command V. There you go. All of those positions have been copied over. So hopefully you can see that if I just scrub very slowly. Let's watch it from the top. And I could probably put it on this hook coming here. I'm going to make sure that the playhead within the sequence, within the timeline stays the same. That is also represented in the effects control. Again, on the playhead here, in the effects control, Command V, and I've copied them over again. So I will get the same effect. Let's watch that from the top. So it adds this really cool zoom in and zoom out effect, which is great when you're trying to stylize a video that has some type of impact that you want to show on screen. But that's one way of looking at it. Another way you can implement is by adding a zoom in and then zoom out onto 2 different clips. So for example, I've got the Bugatti spinning around and it almost feels like it should zoom in onto this wheel. And then here I've got this push in motion, which could probably help the zoom in. So if I was to zoom in on the wheel and then it'd follow up with that push motion, it'd actually be pretty cool. So I'm going to select a particular area. I believe the camera slows down around about here. So again, I'll put my playhead there. I'll click the clip back over into scale. I'll hit the keyframe button. I'll go down perhaps towards the end of the clip and I'll zoom right in onto the wheel. So as you can see, I've added 2 keyframes. I might also do something similar with the position. So if I move back to where the zoom starts, I'll click the keyframe for position. The reason why I want to make sure I click the keyframe for position is because I don't want to lose the position that I've originally got across the whole video clip. Now I've got that keyframe in, I'm going to move straight back into the scale. You can see over here in the effects control timeline. And what I'll do is perhaps position the image so the Bugatti wheel is in the center. And what I'm basically doing there is anybody who's watching the video, they have this center view. So when it zooms into the wheel, it just makes sense as you get this centered view of the camera pushing in on Andrew Tate, Tristan, Sartorial, and Luke. So let's just have a quick look at that. You see? So quick zoom in and straight. Now there's other ways to do this. You could mask the wheel. You could bring out X, Y, and Z. And if this clip was different, you could probably apply a zoom out, a zoom in. But I just want to keep it really basic. That's the zoom in and zoom out ability you can use to add motion to your videos. And you do this using the keyframes within your effects control panel. That's just for individual clips. And what the nested sequence allows us to do is apply effects onto multiple clips. Back in our project, I want to talk about nested sequences. By now, you should already understand how to add simple effects such as the zoom in and zoom out effect. However, that's just for Back in our project, I want to talk about nested sequences. By now, you should already understand how to add simple effects such as the zoom in and zoom out effect. However, that's just for individual clips. And what the nested sequence allows us to do is apply effects onto multiple clips. That's the very basic understanding you need when it comes to nested sequences. So I've got a set of clips here which I've downloaded from YouTube, which is showing different great leaders. And what I'm going to do is just add a cross dissolve effect across all of them. Now, don't get too caught up on the actual effects that I'm talking about. I'm just trying to show you how you can layer different effects within a nested sequence. What is a cross dissolve effect? Well, essentially, it allows you to cross dissolve between one image to another. So over here in my effects panel, I can type cross and you'll see it there under the video transitions dissolve. So Premiere Pro has default effects that you can use. This is not uncommon for all editing software to have their own built-in effects library that you can just drag onto your timeline and use. I'm going to click cross dissolve, drag it over these two clips here. And if I just scrub through the two clips, you can see this dissolve effect between the two clips. I'm just going to highlight all 5 clips and press Command D. That will create cross dissolves on all of the clips. Again, just to reiterate, don't get caught up on the effects that I'm using. Throughout the CC Essentials, you will come across different effects, and I will talk through transitions and all of that cool stuff in terms of video editing later in the course. If I play this scene, so you can see there's a cross dissolve effect on all of the clips. Let's just say I wanted this zoom in effect happening across all the clips. I couldn't do that individually, or if I wanted to, it would be such a pain. How you'd go about doing this is you'd highlight all the clips, right click and click nest. When you click that, you'll come up with this nest sequence name. So I'm going to name mine NS1. Okay. And you can see over here in the project panel, there's another sequence that's been created, which is the nest sequence. Now, what I can do, if I just zoom in on this clip, you'll be able to tell that it is now translated into a single clip. And over in my effects control panel on the left-hand side, you can see I have the same options, but for the entire nested sequence. So if I was to go to the start of this nested sequence, click the stopwatch icon for position and scale, allowing me to keyframe these two positions. And I traveled all the way to the end of the clip. And let's just say I wanted this zoom in style effect. I'll go in by approximately 140, perhaps even position it down a bit, maybe centralize it. Who knows? It's up to you. But if I watch this back, and I'll do this through the scrub, you can start to see that the camera is moving in while simultaneously applying the cross dissolve effect. Albeit that it's not a crazy zoom, it's more of a subtle zoom I've done here, but let me just zoom it in quite drastically, just so you can see the effect itself. So let's go back again. Look at that. You can start to see the zoom starting to happen as the cross dissolves are happening as well. So what nested sequences allow you to do, and again, for the third time in this lesson, don't worry about the effects, don't worry about the keyframing, don't worry about the zooming. It's the principle of nested sequences. And nested sequences allow you to apply your base level effect across all your sequences, then nest your base level effect across all your clips, then nest the sequence, and you can then apply additional effects to the entire nested sequence. Try and grasp this concept, because because it genuinely can help you later down the line. For me in particular, it's a massive help when I'm using speed ramping, and this is something we will go on to later in CC Essentials. But usually when I speed up a clip and then slow it back down, I'll need to nest it because I most likely will need to apply some type of zoom in and zoom out effect on the clip. Now, with that being said, that's one of the use case scenarios of nested sequences. Another use case scenario is on our original TRW Tate ad. Let's just say this is an edit that you've done in Solidarity, but you needed to add it to a bigger project that you're creating. And for example, let's just say the CC TRW Tate ad that we've got and the recreation that we're creating is the bigger project. What you can actually do is over in your project panel, click on the other project. And if you find the full sequence, and usually you can find that by looking for this icon here that represents a sequence, you can drag that onto another timeline and it comes as a nested sequence. And the reason I'm showing you this is because it's not uncommon for you to create a nested sequence, then dive into that nested sequence and perhaps treat that like its own individual project. Let me try and explain this further. If I was to go back into the nested sequence that we created, if I was to double click on the nested sequence, I want you to keep an eye on the different sequences we've got within this timeline, right? We've got the CCTRW Tate ad, which now includes a nested sequence of the TRW Tate ad, right? The original one. But if I was to double click this nested sequence that is made within the CCTRW Tate ad, double click, look on the timeline in terms of the sequences. NS1 has come up, and within NS1, if I just quickly expand this, I press Command plus and double click on the side, you can see what is within the nested sequence. And I can start to play around with this sequence. I can add sounds, I can do whatever I want to do, and then I can go back into my original file, the CCTRW Tate ad, and all of that would have been applied within this sequence. So there you have it, nested sequence, essentially a sequence within a sequence. In Basics 1, I mentioned a feature within the effects control panel relating to opacity, which is called blend mode. I like to use blend mode quite significantly throughout my projects. I think it's a really easy way to bring some flavor to your clips. And how I tend to do this is when I have a particular overlay footage, usually some type of stock footage like this, which isn't necessarily video, it's more graphics or VFX or whatever you want to call it. I tend to use this on top of clips to help convey the message or style the video. So let's just have a quick look at this intro scene. So what I want to do is blend two frames together. The first being this clip here, which we can see of the wolf. And to do that, I need to ensure that my overlay footage or human anatomy footage is above the clip I want to blend it with. And the reason why I like this particular clip as an overlay or blend, because Andrew Tate's actually talking about leveling up. And if you look at the human anatomy video clip, it looks almost like a game or a character leveling up. And what I can easily do is click on the video clip over in the effects control panel where we would usually play around with the position and scale. You also have opacity, and within opacity you have this setting here called blend mode. Now it's currently set as normal. If you drop down this menu, you have multiple options, and without going through all the options themselves, what you tend to have is a section here which plays with the shadows, so darken, multiply or color burn. You have another section here which tends to play with the brightness. You have another section here which is more of a combination of the two, another section which is related to negative color, and another section which is related predominantly to color. So for example, if I was to go into divide, you can see over here on the program panel this type of negative play between the two clips. I commonly use screen or overlay, in this case screen. So check it out, you can somewhat see the wolf in the background, and what I want to try and do is increase the blend and not have the human anatomy footage as powering. To do this, ensure that you click on the footage that you want to create the blend with, and where I've selected screen, above this you have opacity. I'm just going to dial this down, and I think around about 75% is good. So if we look over here on the program panel, I think the only thing that's missing is I need to resize or reposition the wolf clip. So I'm just going to click down on the wolf clip and I'll position it so it covers that bottom gap. And there we go. I'm quite happy with this blend, the way it looks. I'll run it back and play. However, you need to understand the blend mode, opacity, and all of these skills skills that I'm teaching you, it's down to your creative choice and what you think looks good to you. So let's just quickly play this back. So you see that the blend mode has also been applied onto the second clip automatically. That's because it's above the clip, and this particular human anatomy clip is going to carry on the blend mode and opacity throughout. Because keep in mind, if we just quickly look back over here in the effects panel, I've not keyframed anything in. The stopwatch has not been hit. Therefore, the 75% opacity and the blend mode will remain for however long I have this clip on the screen. So for example, if I was to push it all the way across, you'll see that it continues. But I don't want that. I want it to be towards the end of this wolf clip, and I want to have it at the start of this punch bag clip. Maybe even less, perhaps just when Andrew Tate kicks the bag there. So I'll just quickly cut that. Now, the only thing that's actually bugging me is when the wolf clip drops off. It's a bit of a hard transition. I don't know if you can see that, right? I'm just scrubbing my playhead between the two clips, and you can see this hard drop off of the transition. I'd rather it would fade off. And there's two ways I can go about doing this, right? I can click on the wolf clip. I can hit opacity as a keyframe. So if I hit it there, I've got 100% opacity. I can travel all the way down to the end of the clip, and I could probably go 0 opacity, right? And what you'll start to see is between these two keyframes over in the effects control panel, you can see me just scrubbing through the two keyframes. And then if you quickly look over to the program panel, you can see that it starts to fade out gradually and then moves into the human anatomy clip. So let's just quickly have a look at that holistically. Yeah, it's kind of okay. I'm going to remove that. Command Z, get rid of both the keyframes. Another way of doing this is placing a cross dissolve on the wolf clip. So to do this, over in my effects tab on the right hand side, if I write cross, I can find under video transition, cross dissolve, drag that onto the end of the clip. And let's just have a look if that executes the drop in opacity in a much more subtler way. Cool. So I actually think that this human anatomy comes in too early. I might push it forward. Let's just quickly play that. So looking back, I actually think the human anatomy clip shouldn't necessarily come on top of the wolf. It most likely would be better if I have it as its own individual clip and have the blend mode run over the punching bag. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. And what I might do is just grab a cross dissolve over this clip and pull it back. So basically it's decreasing its opacity as we move further into the Tate punching bag clip. So let's just watch that again from the top. Yeah, I like that a lot more. And what I might do is come back to the very start and take the initial human anatomy clip, drag that over the start of the 300 clip, change the blend mode. So again, I've dragged the clip above the clip that I want to create the blend mode on. Click on the clip, go over to the effects control panel, over in opacity in the blend mode, I'm going to hit screen, and then over in my effects tab, grab a cross dissolve, pop that on the end. I might drag that out a bit because I'd like it to fade off a lot earlier. Let's have a look. Okay, so I'm really happy with that. Let me just quickly play how I've used one clip. I've cut it in between another clip and used blend mode to create a very simple styling effect to the video, but very effective. I'm really happy with that. So just to recap, over in the effects controls, you can use blend mode to blend between two clips. Over in the effects tab, you can use the cross dissolve to reduce the opacity of a clip as you're getting towards the end of the clip. And me personally, I tend to use blend mode quite a lot. In fact, on this clip here of the Tates moving in on a potential threat, I'm going to add another blend mode. So over in my overlays, I've got this futuristic clip of a hood, which is representative of perhaps perhaps like a night vision or army style type of target. And I can simply set my in and out points on the video, drag it across on the top of the timeline, and you can see at the moment it's covering the entire clip underneath. So what I want to do is reposition this first over in the effects control. I'm going to scale it down so it fits nicely, and then I'm literally just going to go into the blend mode and hit screen, and there you have it. I now have another overlay. So there's a lesson on blend mode. Be sure to make use of this in your projects. It's really simple but super effective. Throughout your creative journey, it's not uncommon, especially from a learning perspective, that watching the same creative project can sometimes get laborious. I understand journey. Throughout your creative journey, it's not uncommon, especially from a learning perspective, that watching the same creative project can sometimes get laborious. I understand this as I've been in the content creation field for over a decade now. So what I'd like to do is introduce another project that I have been working on. And throughout these lessons, I will constantly switch between projects. As you've seen me previously switch over to a talking head video of Arno. I believe it's the best way to keep you all engaged. So this project in particular, at time of recording, is currently confidential. It's a launch of a feature that we are including within the real world. And as you can see, I've named the project file the Quadruple X program. As you can see, I've got the original sequence in the timeline, and I've recreated another sequence called CCC for this lesson in particular. And I've cut out certain parts of the narrative to ensure that I retain confidentiality. As you all know, I specialize in video ads for my client. So my client Tate has given me an audio note with a very simple brief, and I've pieced together this video advert, so let's have a watch.
You joined the real world because you understood that it was your chance to escape the Matrix. But you committed the capital crime. You gave up. Nothing good in life has ever come to quitters. Other people joined at the exact same time as you and never quit. People which were on your level, which are monumentally surpassing you in every single human metric and will continue to do so for the rest of human time. Your ancestors will think back to the time when you had a chance to escape and instead stayed a slave. The real world has changed significantly since your participation. If you understood the upgrades which are about to be implemented, you would make sure you instantly rejoin the real world. There is only so far you can be dragged towards success. Eventually it gets to a stage where you have to take action. You have to decide to be the person who doesn't quit. You have to decide to be the person who truly wants to escape the Matrix. The real world upgrade is launching. Very shortly, which is why we sent you a push notification. This is why you were informed. The question is, will you be inside?
We're gonna kill him. You understand that?
Throughout your creative journey, it's not uncommon, especially from a learning perspective, that watching the same creative project can sometimes get laborious. I understand this as I've been in the content creation field for over a decade now. So what I'd like to do is introduce another project that I have been working on. And throughout these lessons, I will constantly switch between projects. As you've seen me previously switch over to a talking head video of Arno. I believe it's the best way to keep you all engaged. So this project in particular, at time of recording, is currently confidential. It's a launch of a feature that we are including within the real world. And as you can see, I've named the project file the Quadruple X program. As you can see, I've got the original sequence in the timeline and I've recreated another sequence called CCC for this lesson in particular. And I've cut out certain parts of the narrative to ensure that I retain confidentiality. As you all know, I specialize in video ads for my client. So my client Tate has given me an audio note with a very simple brief, and I've pieced together this video advert, so let's have a watch.
You joined the real world because you understood that it was your chance to escape the Matrix, but you committed the capital crime. You gave up. Nothing good in life has ever come to quitters. Other people joined at the exact same time as you and never quit. People which were on your level, which are monumentally surpassing you in every single human metric and will continue to do so for the rest of human time. Your ancestors will think back to the time when you had a chance to escape and instead stayed a slave. The real world has changed significantly since your participation. If you understood the upgrades which are about to be implemented, you would make sure you instantly rejoin the real world. There is only so far you can be dragged towards success. Eventually it gets to a stage where you have to take action. You have to decide to be the person who doesn't quit. You have to decide to be the person who truly wants to escape the Matrix. The real world upgrade is launching very shortly, which is why we sent you a push notification. This is why you were informed. The question is, will you be inside?
We're gonna kill him. You understand that?
Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about cropping and a split screen effect. It's a split screen effect that's commonly used in vertical videos. However, the same principles can be used in a cinematic video or a talking head video. But in this lesson, I just wanted to reveal another content creation to inspire you on your creative journey. So within my Quadruple X program footage, there's a scene where I've got a phone breaking through the glass, demonstrating the real world app. And I believe I've got very similar clips twice within the video. And what I want to try and do is bring both clips together and apply a split screen effect. So over here, I've got the first clip.
The real world has changed significantly since your participation.
And then further down the timeline, I've got the second clip.
Instantly rejoin the real world.
So to do this, I'm going to drag the second clip over the top of the first. So within my Quadruple X program footage, there's a scene where I've got a phone breaking through the glass, demonstrating the real world app. And I believe I've got very similar clips twice within the video. And what I want to try and do is bring both clips together and apply a split screen effect. So over here, I've got the first clip.
The real world has changed significantly since your participation.
And then further down the timeline, I've got the second clip.
Instantly rejoin the real world.
So to do this, I'm going to drag the second clip over the top of the first clip. As you can see here on the timeline, I'm going to get rid of this speed ramp. This is something we'll talk about a lot later down the line. Get rid of the cross dissolve on the bottom footage. So now I've got two clips on top of one another. Obviously within your program monitor, you can only see the first clip. As you should know by now, the clip that's at the top of the track is always the one that is shown within your video edit. So there's multiple ways to go about doing this. I'm going to try and show you the most quick and easiest way. And to do that, I'm going to try and show you what I believe to be the most effective way and how I would go about doing it. But there are multiple ways to create a split screen effect. So because this video is a horizontal video rather than a vertical video, the split screen I want to create will be side by side. If you're working on a vertical video, you would apply the same principles, however, do it one above the other. So the the very first thing I'm going to do is over in my effects tab, I'm going to search the word crop. Under video effects and transform, you can see the effect crop. I'll click this and drag it on the top of the phone breaking the glass. Let go of that. And then over in the effects control, where we would usually have motion, opacity, time remapping, you can see the FX has been added crop. And within this effect, you can see we have left, top, right, bottom. And what you can do is dial each of these effects to crop your clip. So if we was to increase the percentage on the left, you can see over in the program panel, I'm starting to crop the video clip. And I can also do that on the right. And then if I go to the motion, I can move the position of this clip so it's over on the right hand side of the screen. Now, if I just quickly play that,
Significant. Significantly, since you're participating.
you can see we're starting to get this split screen effect. And what I might go ahead and do is just quickly reposition both the clips to make them look a bit better. Okay, so I've got both clips side by side, and what I want to do now is make sure So within my quadruple X program footage, there's a scene where I've got a phone breaking through the glass demonstrating the real world app. And I believe I've got very similar clips twice within the video. And what I want to try and do is bring both clips together. So within my quadruple X program footage, there's a scene where I've got a phone breaking through the glass demonstrating the real world app. And I believe I've got very similar clips twice within the video. And what I want to try and do is bring both clips together and apply a split screen effect. So over here, I've got the first clip.
The real world has changed significantly since your participation.
And then further down the timeline, I've got the second clip.
Instantly rejoin the real world.
So to do this, I'm going to drag the second clip over the top of the first clip. As you can see here on the timeline, I'm going to get rid of this speed ramp. This is something we'll talk about a lot later down the line. Get rid of the cross dissolve on the bottom footage. So now I've got two clips on top of one another. Obviously within your program monitor, you can only see the first clip. As you should know by now, the clip that's at the top of the track is always the one that is shown within your video edit. So there's multiple ways to go about doing this. I'm going to try and show you the most quick and easiest way. And to do that, I'm going to try and show you what I believe to be the most effective way and how I would go about doing it. But there are multiple ways to create a split screen effect. So because this video is a horizontal video rather than a vertical video, the split screen I want to create will be side by side. If you're working on a vertical video, you would apply the same principles. However, do it one above the other. So the very first thing I'm going to do is over in my effects tab, I'm going to search the word crop. Under video effects and transform, you can see the effect crop. I'll click this and drag it on the top of the phone breaking the glass. Let go of that. And then over in the effects control, where we would usually have motion, opacity, time remapping, you can see the FX has been added crop. And within this effect, you can see we have left, top, right, bottom. And what you can do is dial each of these effects to crop your clip. So if we was to increase the percentage on the left, you can see over in the program panel, I'm starting to crop the video clip. And I can also do that on the right. And then if I go to the motion, I can move the position of this clip so it's over on the right hand side of the screen. Now, if I just quickly play that
Significantly since your participation.
you can see we're starting to get this split screen effect. And what I might go ahead and do is just quickly reposition both the clips to make them look a bit better. Okay, so I've got both clips side by side, and what I want to do now is make sure that this is actually central. And to do that, let's look at some of the tools within the program control monitor. I'm just going to drag this down so we can see the program monitor more clearly. And what you actually have is a spanner button here. If I click this button, I have a list of different options that I can use. The very first one I'm going to go and check is safe margins. So this generates two sets of squares with a very small indicator showing where the midpoint of the screen is. And then I'm going to go ahead and click the spanner again and check show rulers. Now what you'll see is around the program monitor, I've got a set of rulers horizontally and vertically. And what this allows me to do is create guidelines. So over here on the vertical ruler, you can see my cursor has changed. I'm going to click down and drag my mouse across the screen until I get to a point which meets the midpoint of the safe margin, which is 960. And I'll let go. Over on the left corner within the program monitor, you can see we've got a drop down menu for fit. If I drop this down, I can choose different percentages to zoom in and get a bit more meticulous on this edit. So I'm going to zoom in to 200%, and I can see the video clip on the right hand side doesn't actually sit flush in the center from the guideline we've created. So with the simple skills we've learned, I can readjust this clip, and I'm going to do that by clicking on the clip in the timeline, which is this top clip here. Go back over to the effects control and reposition to the point where I've got this sitting perfectly on the guideline, which is round about there. Come back into the program panel, select my zoom level to fit, and then what I'll actually do is back into the spanner icon, uncheck safe margins, and uncheck show rulers. You can leave them on, however, it's entirely up to you. I tend to leave them off and only use them when I'm trying to do an effect that requires some level of precision like this one. What you'll notice is that your guideline will stay on on the screen. If you hover over it, the cursor will change and you can just drag that off the screen to get rid of it. I know that this center line is sitting perfect between the two images. However, if I look on the right image, there's this black gap within the aspect ratio. If I quickly select my zoom level, go into 200%, and you can see I've got this slider bar that allows me to move from side to side when I'm zoomed. If I move over to the right side,